Welcome to today's podcast. We're discussing Viktor Frankl's seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning. Published in 1946, this book recounts Frankl's harrowing experiences in Nazi concentration camps and introduces his groundbreaking approach to psychotherapy known as logotherapy. Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning shortly after his liberation from a concentration camp. He endured the horrors of Auschwitz and other camps. The book is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. Frankl's own experiences and his observations of his fellow prisoners led him to a crucial insight, that even in the direst circumstances, individuals retain a fundamental freedom, the freedom to choose their attitude towards their suffering. This realization forms the very foundation of logotherapy, often described as meaning-centered psychotherapy. He doesn't glorify suffering. He makes it very clear that if suffering can be avoided, it should be, but he also recognizes that some suffering is unavoidable. It is a part of life. And the way we choose to face that suffering, he argues, can be a source of meaning. The enduring legacy of Man's Search for Meaning is its message of hope. Frankl's experiences show us that even in the darkest of times, we are not simply victims of our circumstances. We have the freedom to choose our attitude, to find meaning in suffering, and to live lives of purpose. That message, I believe, continues to resonate with people across cultures and generations. So let's dive into today's podcast. As always, please share, like, and subscribe.
This book, I gotta say, it's not a light read, but it's one that really makes you think. You walk away changed.
Oh, absolutely. It's a tough read.
But it's like important tough, you know?
It is. It's one of those books everyone should read at some point.
Right.
All right, so today we're diving deep into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Now, this book, it was born out of Frankl's experiences in the Nazi concentration camps.
Right.
So yeah, we're talking about some really heavy stuff here. And we've got Rabbi Harold Kushner's foreword to guide us. It paints this really vivid picture of Frankl already a psychiatrist, already fascinated by the meaning of life. Mm-hmm. And this is before he faced those unimaginable horrors.
It's important to remember that.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine being Frankl, having a chance to escape to America as the Nazis closed in. But instead, he chooses to stay.
To stay with his family.
Exactly. It's a powerful testament to his character, isn't it?
It's more than just character, though. And I think what people might get hung up on is, Frankl, he survived the Holocaust. So you go in thinking, man, this is going to be super depressing.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be all doom and gloom.
Right. But it's not. It's really about hope. This context, it's crucial because it shows us that Frankl wasn't just theorizing about meaning from some, ivory tower.
Yeah, it's this incredible testament to the power of the human spirit.
Yeah.
Like what Frankl discovered in those camps, it wasn't just about survival. It was about the driving force behind that survival.
Which is meaning, okay, so he's not just saying be happy, think positive thoughts. This is deeper.
Oh, this is way deeper than just positive thinking. It's he's flipping the script on us, He's saying if you want a fulfilling life, don't just chase pleasure.
Don't chase pleasure.
Chase meaning, find your why.
Okay, find your why, and then what?
And the how will become bearable. He's got this super powerful quote, actually. He says, he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how.
Wow.
Right? And in the camps, this idea, it played out in the most extreme circumstances you can imagine.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, stripped of your identity, your family, everything.
Everything. Imagine that. You're stripped of everything. What even keeps you going?
I don't even know. I can't imagine.
So Frankl observed that the people who clung to some form of meaning, whether it was a loved one, a goal, or even just a tiny act of defiance.
A tiny act of defiance. Okay.
Those were the ones who were more likely to persevere.
So it's having that why, having that purpose. It's almost what is that saying? Like an anchor in a storm.
Exactly.
Something to hold on to.
It keeps you grounded.
It keeps you grounded, exactly. It's still hard to wrap your head around, though, right? Finding meaning in a place that's literally designed to strip you of your humanity.
It is. It's incredibly difficult to grasp. But Frankl, He witnessed it firsthand. He saw it in the prisoners who shared their last scraps of food with each other. He saw it in the ones who used humor, like as a defense against despair. Even those who engaged in, like, intellectual debates, right?
I still had those.
Yes. These were small acts, but they were significant.
Right.
Because they were acts of rebellion. Rebellion against this attempt to dehumanize them.
It's like they were fighting to hold on to their humanity.
Absolutely.
That's so powerful. There's there's this one story that I remember reading that just really got me. It was about a prisoner who traded his last piece of bread for a shave, just so he would look, he said, healthier for the next selection. It's heartbreaking, but it's like, it shows you like how important that like desire for dignity is.
It's that innate desire for hope. It doesn't just go away.
It doesn't. And it's amazing how these small things, how they can provide that hope. And it wasn't just, in these kind of like outward gestures. Frankl himself, like he found solace in these little things too. He talks about how he would have like these imaginary dialogues with his wife in his head as he's marching, just picturing her face. And those thoughts, as simple as they were, they sustained him.
It's amazing the power of our minds to create those little pockets of meaning,
To find those little escapes, right?
Exactly. And it wasn't always like internal either. There's this incredible moment Frankl writes about where he stumbles upon this rare sight, which was a bird singing just in the middle of the camp. And it was this like simple act of nature that reminded him of his wife, of the world outside the suffering.
Of beauty.
Yes. And it filled with a sense of hope that he just clung to.
It's like those tiny sparks. They were these lifelines to something bigger than themselves.
Exactly. It makes you realize meaning can be found in the most unexpected places.
It really does, even in those situations.
And, you can imagine the emotional roller coaster these prisoners went through. Frankl, he actually noticed these distinct phases in their mental states. Like initially, there's this shock, this disbelief, like, is this actually happening?
Right, this can't be real.
Exactly. And then as that reality sinks in, there's this chilling apathy that takes over.
Where your emotions just go numb.
Yeah, like a defense mechanism.
To protect yourself almost.
Right, because if you let yourself feel everything, you would just break down.
You'd be overwhelmed.
Completely. But what's fascinating is that even in this, like, numb state, Frankl observed prisoners finding ways to experience moments of joy.
Wait, hold on, joy. How do you find joy when you're literally surrounded by death and suffering?
I know, it's crazy, right? But he documented prisoners organizing, like music performances.
What?
Yeah, they would tell jokes. They would have these heated debates about philosophy. They were seemingly insignificant acts, but they were actually incredibly powerful.
Because they reminded them of what, like their humanity?
Exactly. It was a way for them to reclaim a tiny bit of control.
In a world where they had zero control.
Exactly.
It's like even in that situation, they still had that choice.
And that's the key. Frankl truly believed that even in the most dire circumstances, we have the freedom to choose our attitude.
To choose our response to our suffering. Wow.
Think about that for a second, the power we hold, even then.
Yeah, and it's like how it blows my mind, right? Like even in those conditions, you still have that tiny bit of, like you said, choice.
It's really incredible when you think about it.
It is, but how do you even, how do we apply that to, to our lives? I mean, I'm not thankfully facing a concentration camp.
Right. Most people thankfully won't face anything even remotely close to that level of horror.
Right.
But see, that's the thing about Frankl's message. It wasn't meant to be limited to just people who had experienced extreme trauma. He truly believed that this search for meaning, it's universal. We all grapple with it at some point, And so while, his experiences were obviously incredibly unique, the lessons he learned, they have implications for all of us.
So it's not about comparing, it's about the core principle.
Exactly. It's about understanding that meaning isn't something you just find lying around.
Right.
It's something you create.
You create it, okay.
Even when life throws you those curveballs. The insights that Frankl pulled from the ashes, insights that can really change how you think about life's challenges.
He was grappling with these questions while staring down the abyss.
And he wasn't some superhuman who just sailed through the camps unscathed.
Right. He suffered.
He did. And he observed that those who survived were often the ones who clung to a sense of meaning, a reason to keep going.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's like meaning itself became a survival mechanism.
Almost like their bodies needed it to live.
In a way. And Frankl breaks this down even further. He identifies 3 specific sources of meaning that he saw helping people hold on.
Okay, let's hear them. What were those sources?
He talks about finding meaning through work, through love, and through courage in the face of suffering. These weren't just abstract ideas to him, they were lifelines, he saw playing out around him.
Work, love, and courage. Let's unpack those a bit. So, meaningful work even in a concentration camp. Is that even possible?
Frankl saw it firsthand. He describes how some prisoners, they were able to find some purpose in their assigned tasks, however trivial those tasks might seem to us, and those prisoners, they seem to fare better. It's like having a sense of agency, even in the most powerless of situations, it made a difference.
So it wasn't about the work itself being, enjoyable, but about finding a way to make it matter, to give it some sense of purpose.
Exactly. It speaks to this deep human need to feel like our actions have meaning, that we're not just cogs in a machine, even in the most dehumanizing of circumstances.
That makes sense. And love, I can only imagine how important that must have been in the camps. To hold on to the memory of loved ones, that hope of seeing them again.
Absolutely. Frankl himself, he clung to the love he felt for his wife. That thought of seeing her again, it was a driving force for him. And he describes other prisoners who would risk their own survival by sharing their meager rations with a loved one just to see a flicker of recognition, a moment of shared humanity in the midst of hell.
It's incredible the lengths people will go to for love, the sacrifices they'll make. Makes you realize the depth of the human spirit.
And it highlights just how powerful love is as a source of meaning. It's not just about romantic love either. It could be love for a friend, a child, even a stranger. It's about that connection, that feeling of belonging, even when everything else has been stripped away.
Okay, so we've got meaningful work and love. What about this third one? Courage in the face of suffering. What did that look like?
This one's particularly interesting because it suggests that even when we feel utterly powerless, there's an inner freedom to choose how we respond to suffering. Frankl gives these powerful examples of prisoners who found small moments of beauty in a single flower pushing through the cracks in the pavement, who shared their last crust of bread, who even cracked jokes in the face of unimaginable cruelty.
So even in the darkest of times, there was still that spark of choice, a way to hold on to your humanity.
It's a profound insight. Frankl argues that while we can't always choose our circumstances, we can always choose our response. And that choice, however small, can make all the difference. Think about it. Have you noticed this in your own life?
Now that you mention it, I think we all have those moments where even when things are tough, having that why, that sense of purpose, it helps us push through. It's like finding your footing on shaky ground. It might not change the situation, but it changes how you face it.
Exactly. And that's a powerful place to start. But to really understand how this works, we need to go deeper into Frankl's own experiences in the camps. Not to dwell on the horrors, but to see how the human mind copes and even finds meaning in the most extreme circumstances.
So let's go there. Frankl, he doesn't sugarcoat the experience in his book. He lays out 3 phases a prisoner's mental state goes through, right? Shock, apathy, and then finally liberation.
Yeah, he doesn't just clinically describe them either. He really takes you into the heart of the experience. That initial shock of arrival, the stripping away of your identity, your possessions, even your name. It's
hard to even imagine, right?
It really is. Hard to fathom that psychological impact.
He talks about this chilling moment where he sees his own manuscript, like his life's work up to that point, being used as lining for a latrine.
Oh, wow.
And then, in that same moment of despair, he finds a page from a Hebrew prayer book tucked into the pocket of a coat he'd been given.
It's an incredibly powerful juxtaposition, isn't it?
It really is.
The destruction of everything he'd worked for, alongside this tiny scrap of something that offered solace and connection. It speaks to this idea that meaning can be found in the most unexpected places, even in, the darkest moments.
And then there's this phase of apathy that sets in. It's almost like the soul goes numb just to survive.
Exactly. Frankl describes this intense focus on basic survival, this dulling of emotions, even like a distorted sense of time. Small things, a rare extra bit of food, a few moments of rest, they took on outsized importance.
It's both amazing and terrifying how the human mind adapts, to even the most extreme circumstances.
For sure.
But you also see the darker side of that survival instinct, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
He talks about prisoners fighting over scraps of food, betraying each other just to hold on a little longer.
It's really a question, isn't it? This idea of does our environment entirely define us? Frankl argues no. He maintains that even in Auschwitz, prisoners, they retained this flicker of choice, this inner freedom.
So even when it feels like all hope is lost, there's still a part of us that can choose how to respond. That's a powerful thought.
It is, and it's what kept him going. He gives examples of prisoners who risked their lives to help others, sharing their last morsel of food or offering a word of comfort, even when it put them in danger. It's a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, even when stripped bare.
It makes you wonder, where does that strength come from? How do you hold on to your humanity in the face of such dehumanization?
That's the heart of what Frankl sought to understand.
And Frankl, he had this incredible ability to find these glimmers of hope in the bleakest of situations. He called it tragic optimism.
Tragic optimism. Okay, I need to hear more about this. It's like a contradiction.
That sounds like an oxymoron almost.
Yeah.
But it's actually a really profound concept. So
Yeah.
imagine like acknowledging the harsh realities of life, the pain, the loss, even death,
Okay.
but not letting them crush you. That's tragic optimism. It's recognizing that even in those really, really dark moments, there's still potential for growth.
For meaning.
For meaning, yes.
So it's like finding like a tiny little speck of light in a completely pitch black room. How do you even begin to cultivate that?
That's the question, right?
How? Especially when you are in it.
Well, Frankl was very clear on this point. He was adamant that meaning, it's not something that just falls into your lap.
Okay.
It's not about waiting for happiness to find you.
You have to search for it, create it?
You have to create it.
Okay.
You have to actively create
So
it.
even when it's hard, you have to take action.
Yes. Take action, even when you don't feel like it. And the amazing thing is that meaning, it can be found in so many different places, It might be in your work, it might be in your relationships, it might be in something creative you do.
Right, like a hobby or something.
Exactly. Or even just like small acts of kindness you do for others. It's about finding what resonates with you, what gives your life that sense of purpose.
And that's different for everyone, right?
Of course. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. And remember those 3 avenues to meaning that we talked about earlier.
Right, the meaningful work, love, and then courage.
Yes. So those are like a roadmap, but it's up to each of us to figure out what those actually look like in our own lives. But what we're really after are those hidden gems of wisdom.
Learning to dance in the rain.
I love that. It's about accepting that, but we can still choose to find joy and purpose, even when things are tough.
It's like we each have our own personalized compass.
Exactly.
Okay, so say our compass breaks, right, and we're totally lost. Okay, so how do we do it? How do we dance in the rain?
Well, Frankl developed some really incredible techniques to help people do just that. That's where Frankl's concept of logotherapy comes in.
The logotherapy.
It's not about erasing pain or pretending everything's okay. It's about finding a way to navigate suffering and still come out on the other side with a reason to live.
It's about healing through meaning, finding your why, even perhaps especially when life throws you curveballs.
Okay, so logotherapy, it's about this healing through meaning. But what does that actually mean? What are we even talking about here?
It boils down to this. Frankl believed that the primary drive in us humans, it isn't pleasure, it's not power, it's meaning. We are hardwired to seek it out. And when we can't find it, we suffer.
That's interesting. And he actually says that this inner tension, this striving for meaning, it's actually a sign of mental health.
Right.
Most people would think the opposite, wouldn't they?
It is kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? But think about it. If you're not striving, not reaching for something beyond just yourself, then what's left?
Yeah.
Frankl argues that it's that emptiness, that lack of direction, that's at the root of a lot of our, modern day struggles.
He talks about Sunday neurosis.
Oh, yeah.
That feeling some folks get when the weekend hits and they're suddenly faced with this void of free time, and they just feel aimless.
I've been there.
Haven't we all? But it's not just about Sundays, is it?
Not at all. He saw it manifesting in so many ways. Depression, addiction, even anger and aggression. These could all be symptoms of this deeper struggle to find meaning. Well, one of the most powerful techniques he developed is called paradoxical intention. It involves leaning into the very thing you're afraid of, embracing what you're trying to avoid. The idea is by intentionally exaggerating the thing that you fear, you kind of break that cycle of anxiety and you gain a sense of control. It's like you're disarming the fear by taking its power away.
So he noticed that sometimes the harder we try to avoid something we're afraid of, the more power we actually give it. So he would actually encourage his patients to do the opposite of what their fear was telling them to do. It's like you're calling your fears bluff, right?
Yeah.
By leaning in, you realize it doesn't have that hold on you that you thought it did.
Exactly. And Frankl, he emphasizes that paradoxical intention, it's not about positive thinking, and it's not about denying reality.
Right.
It's about shifting your perspective, finding a new way, a more empowered way to relate to those challenges.
So have you ever been stuck in a negative thought loop? Maybe replaying a mistake, worrying about something you can't control.
Oh, all the time.
Frankl would say, try paradoxical intention. Could you find a way to almost like laugh at the situation?
Yeah.
Or focus on an act of kindness, however small, just to break the cycle?
Those are great examples because remember, Frankl wasn't just, theorizing from some ivory tower. He lived these ideas. He tested them in the most extreme crucible imaginable, and he found they worked.
The core idea is about confronting your fears head on.
To take away their power.
Exactly. And he had some pretty remarkable success with this, especially for people dealing with phobias and anxiety.
Wow, so it's like tricking your brain almost.
In a way, yeah. But it makes you think, right? Like, how much of this is really in our control if we could just change our approach?
It's true. Mindset is everything, or at least a lot. Okay, but I have to ask, how did he reconcile this belief in, meaning and human freedom with, like, the horrors that he saw?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something that he grappled with his entire life. But I think instead of letting the darkness consume him, he used it. He used it as fuel for his work, for his message of hope.
So it's almost like his suffering, he transcended it and turned it into something to help other people.
Exactly. And he did it all without minimizing the pain or pretending it didn't exist.
Yeah.
He embraced the tragic nature of life.
But held on to that little, that spark.
Yes. That flicker of optimism, of belief in the human spirit.
That we can overcome anything.
And I think that's a message that really resonates with people today, especially in today's world. Maybe we're not facing concentration camps.
Right.
But we all have our own struggles, our own battles to fight.
It's like he's saying life, it's not always sunshine and rainbows, right?
It's not. There's going to be pain.
But you have a choice in how you respond to it.
Exactly. You get to choose what it means. It's a powerful reminder that even when things are truly awful, we still have some power to choose our response.
We do.
And that choice, it can make all the difference.
And that brings us to, okay, I love it. This is where, my mind was blown. It's his whole idea of the super meaning.
The super meaning.
Okay, so break it down for me. What is the super meaning? It sounds like, I don't know, from a comic book or something.
It kind of does, doesn't it?
It does.
But basically, Frankl believed that there's this ultimate meaning to life.
Yeah.
Something bigger than us.
Okay.
And that we might never fully understand it, at least not intellectually.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't strive for it.
So it's this overarching purpose that connects everything, even the bad stuff.
Exactly.
It's almost spiritual.
It does have that element to it, right?
Yeah.
But Frankl was always careful to say that, logotherapy itself, it's not a religion.
Yeah.
But he did acknowledge that for many people, faith, it provides this very powerful framework for meaning.
Of course.
And they can exist together.
Right, so it's all about finding what clicks for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that could be religion, it could be something else. But, he tells this story about a rabbi he met who had lost his wife and all 6 of his children in Auschwitz.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. And to make matters worse, his second wife, she couldn't have children. And he was an Orthodox Jew, so he believed he needed a son to say Kaddish for him after he died.
Wow. That's like a double whammy of just sadness. How do you even begin to process that?
I know, right? It's hard to imagine how anyone could find a reason to go on after experiencing that kind of loss.
It's unimaginable.
And, Frankl, he didn't try to just dismiss the rabbi's pain or offer him, these empty platitudes.
Right. He helped him find a new perspective.
Wow.
He reminded him that, procreation, it's not the only source of meaning in life. There's so much more.
There are other ways to live a life of purpose, even when, the worst has happened.
Exactly. He really emphasized that meaning. It can be found in the things we do in our relationships. Even just the small ways that we contribute to something larger than ourselves.
Right. It's even when we're hurting, our lives still matter.
Absolutely. Frankl believed that every single life has value. Every life has meaning, even when it doesn't feel like it.
It's not about, pretending to be happy all the time either.
No, and it's not about just avoiding suffering at all costs. life's messy, right?
Yeah.
It's about finding those reasons to live, finding that purpose that drives us forward even when it's tough. And that purpose is everywhere, right? Like in the small stuff, too.
Yes. In those little acts of kindness, those moments of connection, the stuff that really lights you up inside.
Right. It doesn't have to be this big, grand thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Frankl's message. It's a message of empowerment,
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that even when things are really rough, we still have that power to choose our attitude, to create meaning, to make a difference.
It's like he's saying, hey, you're the author here. Go write your story.
I love that. And his own life, it was proof.
Yeah.
He lived it. And it's a message I think we need now more than ever. Don't you think?
100%. It's so easy to get caught up in everything, right?
It is.
But you're right. We do have a choice. We all have a purpose. Even when it's hard to see, it's there.
It is. All right, so we've been to hell and back with these descriptions. What happens when liberation finally comes? You'd expect this wave of relief, pure joy, wouldn't you?
You would think so, but Frankl describes something kind of unexpected, this feeling of depersonalization, this surreal sense of unreality, like waking up from a nightmare you can't quite shake. Imagine going from that degree of dehumanization to sudden freedom. It's no wonder the mind struggles to process it.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be incredibly disorienting.
Yeah.
Like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly. He even talks about this former SS commander who, after the war, was found being hidden and protected by 3 young Hungarian Jews he'd imprisoned.
Wow.
It's a truly mind-boggling example of the complexities of the human experience, how trauma and resilience can coexist in such unexpected ways.
Wow, that story it sends chills down my spine. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about good and evil, about forgiveness and retribution.
It's a stark reminder that the world isn't black and white, and it highlights a crucial point: finding meaning. It isn't about achieving some blissful state of constant happiness. It's about having a reason to get up in the morning, even when things are tough, even when the world feels confusing and unfair.
So it's not about happy endings, but about purpose. Even if that purpose is hard-won and constantly evolving.
In a world that often just feels increasingly chaotic, uncertain.
Yeah, like we're surrounded by all these distractions, all these fleeting pleasures, but they don't seem to fill that deeper need.
Right.
For purpose, for something that really, truly matters.
It's like they're just Band-Aids on a deeper wound.
Exactly. So how do we break free from that cycle? What other insights does Frankl offer?
Well, he talks about the importance of what he calls dereflection. It's about shifting your focus away from yourself and towards something larger.
You mean like get out of your own head?
Exactly. Frankl talks about this patient who was struggling to find meaning after the loss of her child. She just felt like her life had been pointless, a failure. Frankl helped her to see that her life had in fact been full of meaning. She had dedicated herself to caring for her child who had been very ill. By shifting her focus away from her own pain and towards the good she had done, the love she had given, she was able to find a sense of purpose again.
That's such a powerful example. It shows that meaning can be found in the most unexpected places, even in the midst of profound suffering. And it speaks to this idea that it's often in giving, that we find true fulfillment.
It's a powerful thing.
It is. So we've talked about these really practical tools, but Frankl, he doesn't shy away from the big existential questions either, does he? That ultimate purpose of life that may always be just beyond our full comprehension, right?
It's that mystery that keeps us going.
So it's okay to not have all the answers. Wrestle with the mystery of it all.
Absolutely. In fact, Frankl, he encourages it. He suggests that instead of demanding life reveal its meaning to us, we should live as though we're being questioned. And our actions, they're the answer.
That's a pretty profound way to look at it. It puts the responsibility squarely on us, doesn't it? Not to passively wait for meaning to kind of like find us, but to actively create it through our choices and our actions. So to wrap things up here, Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's a powerful book. It's born out of unimaginable suffering, but offers this message of resilience, of hope, of the enduring power of the human spirit. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, even when everything seems lost, there's always the possibility of finding meaning, of making our lives count for something.
And it's never too late to start searching for that meaning.
It's not about easy answers or some kind of blissful state of constant happiness. It's about that striving, that searching, that making choices that align with our values, especially when it's hard.
So on that note, I think we're gonna leave everyone with that to think about. This has been incredible.
It really has. Frankl's work, It's mind-blowing.
It's so powerful. And, it's one of those books that I feel like every time you come back to it, you get something new.
Absolutely.
So to everyone listening, make sure you check out Man's Search for Meaning. And until next time, just remember to keep seeking, keep striving, and keep finding, what's that thing that makes life worth living for you?
Your why.
Your why, yes.